Think I just want to share with myself and for to those who might listen to this. It's and my intention is to do that in a way that makes sense and hopefully it's can create some meaning and some direction to the process that I find myself in. Um, and the process, more concretely, is that I'm trying to write an introduction, more than an introduction. Um, I'm trying to write both facilitation for the mood box, um, a structure for facilitating, and also a part of it is also a presentation about why we mm, why it's a voluntary necessity to care about the right things. Um, and the right things, of course, it looks different for everybody. What we find meaningful in our own lives, and right now, for me, it feels very meaningful to try to write about what can be meaningful, and I'm really loving this writing process because it also reveals how I can do that, and I I'm not an academic, and I'm not a writer, or no, I can I like I write things from time to time. I journal and journaling from time to time when I need to mm, be more present of what I'm doing and what's going on. But I don't call myself a writer. Um, and writing is useful for a variety of reasons. Um, right now, I I can see what I'm attempting to do as a kind of disclosing of what I already know. Um, but of course, it's becomes more clear to have some distance from a more vague sense of like knowing to have it very clear and more precise than I'm able to think when I'm not participating in the writing process. So I found myself very excited about um, this framework that I'm attempting to create and to structure and organize around this artwork, the mood box. And the thing itself is very dynamic and structured, and it also can suddenly collapse if I'm not gentle enough with the handling of it. Um, and that's kind of also that also resonates with project itself, or the present, or the more like where I'm at now with the writing. Uh, to to make sense of um, to make sense of something, or to try to lead people into participating with with what I'm writing, and also with the practice that will follow after the more theoretical propositional introduction. It has to the perspective that I'm introducing has to be clear enough on several levels, and the writing has to it has to make it has to be it has to be simple enough to where people can kind of get into like an easy access or an entry point so people can, and myself included, of course. So I kind of orient myself in the orientation that will be given, and I have to pause and just notice or ask if this makes sense to people. So I'm trying to frame my writing from that also perspective of that it's gonna be my attempt is to create a dialogue between me and the participants from the start. And that will also create some kind of grounding, a more shared reality in the space, where the facilitation will be. So another way to say it is because our environment is very contextual based, or we as humans are very contextual based. What do I mean? What do I mean with that we as humans are contextually based? It's like we're if we're standing in a kitchen, we don't um, jump up and down in the sink. That doesn't make sense. And we don't that when we approach the kitchen, it makes sense for us to cook. And that thing, that object of a kitchen informs us what we can do. And so the kitchen is the context, and we know how to more or less how to operate that environment. So going back to the shared reality in a dialogue, that's both a very meaningful way to interact, and also it also is like yeah, the shared reality, of course, it's not necessarily that we experience our reality as shared. But when that happens, we can also, when it's not shared, we also can be opened and open our awareness about somebody else's world that's usually similar or not, or totally different. And what creates that sense of shared reality is usually um, about how we use our language and our interpretations and words and to create meaning. But before we do that articulation of whatever we're trying to articulate, it it's also a mood that that we're in or the other person is in, that we're more or less aware that we're attuning to. Uh, a useful metaphor is like if we listen to music, there's a mood in the music, and that creates something in us listening to it. So to get back to the process of writing, it's very similar to listen to music, I think. Um, yeah. And it's before in my experience of writing, I'm not sure where I'm going. I have a kind of some words and some like knowledge, like propositional knowledge, and some goal that I want to go towards, um, especially when I'm trying to create a specific thing. And that's different from journaling, usually. Uh, so listening to music and writing can be similar in the way that we come into a certain rhythm. We can come in the best case, come into a flow in the writing, and things can become more and more salient. And, and it's also very, we can learn what we've been like, can also learn in that process what the mood of learning is, if that makes sense. Like I can be in a certain mood of listening. If I'm, for instance, if I'm listening to, or we are listening to somebody who teaches something, we we have to listen in a way that is not that we already think we know what the teacher is trying to convey. So to connect this with listening to music is also like certain kind of that's kind of along the way of listening to music and writing in the writing process is it's quite it can be very spontaneous if we allow ourselves to not have a already think that we know how it's gonna look like in a very rigid or fixed way. Like, yeah, I know what I'm gonna write about, so I'm just gonna produce this. That's that's like knowing that the music is heavy metal doesn't doesn't take you on a ride. And if you have never experienced the tone or the mood of the heavy metal music, you won't get a taste of it. You can say that, like, yeah, I don't like. My opinion is that I don't like heavy music, and actually, it is, in my opinion. So I'm kind of what do you call it? I'm kind of by saying that I kind of reveal. I can reveal that I my opinion of heavy music personally is that I don't like it. So by saying that, I'm kind of doing a performative contradiction because I haven't listened to much heavy music because I have, yeah, I have an opinion about that. And yeah, so, and all these opinions is, of course, we have opinions, and there's nothing wrong or in having an opinion, but it's also based on ignorance a lot of times. And like my personal example of heavy metal is based on ignorance. And I also have to say, like, my intuition is also a part of that. Um, I feel like I'm going sideways. So it's but the process of writing that I'm trying to talk about, using the metaphor of listening to music, is like I'm not sure what the next tone is gonna be. Like, is it structure? Is it more like leaning into poetic language? Or maybe I'm toggling between structure or rhythm, structure, or is it more like melody, like this flow of melody that might be more poetic in the writing. But I think when I look at it like that, it's also along the way I noticed that certain ideas that I've been interested in shows up very organically. And then I have to go back to the I or the when something like that shows up, I have to be able to have the flexibility of not having like a particular point. So another way to say it is like the flow has to flow from the more meta perspective. That's more like structuring, organizing the text, and also into the particular um, the more specific depth of the um, structure. So in that case, the whole has to, or the specific part of the text or the presentation has to relate to the whole, the structure, or the more um, overall um, structure. And it has to go back like, okay, if this is a whole, it has to connect to that, like it has to touch on that whole from time to time, and it's of course like to create that that mood. So it's it's a lot of it's a very rewarding process in the way that I'm learning about what I've been learning about. because I have to get clear and come into terms by what I've been doing, spending my time with, and how intelligibility has been created without me necessarily being aware of what has revealed itself in my consciousness. Another way to put it is like writing process is also about gathering intelligibility and also I want to say like it's also what's the word that I've learned? It's also fascinating in the way that it also tends to, in the process, self-organize. Like it's organizing itself if I just stand out of, if I just more like coming to a flow state where maybe I can quote Karl Ove Knausgård in this. I read somewhere, yeah, I think it was from in the book Phenomenology. I'm gonna pause this and get it because it's a really nice quote. So I really have been enjoying this book. It's a Norwegian book called Phenomenology: To Live, to Converse, uh, and to write out towards the mystery in being. Is not a good translation for me to, but yeah, I didn't plan for this to show up, but and it kind of speaks of where I was going about the writing process and when it unfolds itself, so to speak, the intelligibility of learning about what you've been learning about or experienced or whatever form it takes, if it's not specific, if it's not a specific code you're going towards. But it reminded me of this quote of the Norwegian writer Knausgård that they're quoting in this book in the first chapter, and that is on which page is it's the first chapter. It's the start, of course. It's the first chapter, so it says here, and it's written or is quoted by a Danish woman who's called Sina Maria Herholt Lomholt. And the quote is, and it speaks highly to what I was trying to say, about the writing process in my experience. So I'm gonna quote the quote from Knausgård, and I'm not gonna I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to translate it into English. Okay. Being self-conscious. If you have lived many years, the door is given, or yeah, the house is given, the garden is given, the sky and the ocean is given, even the moon that hangs and lights over the rooftop at night is given. The world says itself, but we're not listening. And since we no longer find ourselves in the depths of it, we experience it as a part of ourselves. And that's what makes it disappear for us, or veil maybe, makes it veil or veil itself for us. If we open the door, it doesn't mean anything. It's nothing. It's just something we do to get from a room to another. I want to show you the world like it's now. The door, floor, and the sink, and the garden chair beside the brick wall under the kitchen window, the sun, the water, the trees. You will come to look at it in your own way. You're gonna do your own experiences and live your own life. So, of course, it's the first and foremost I do for my own sake, to show you the world, the little you. Makes my life worth living. And this was actually not what I uh, was thinking of about. It wasn't the quote that I was wanting to share that showed up for me. So now I have to find. It's also speaking of what I tried to say about the it is uh, it's also it is speaking of the process of writing, and but I really want to get more to the point of what I was thinking about. This book is so nice. Like most of the text is like so nice. It's uh, it's also in the beginning. It's like it says here specifically on page 15. It's like, oh, here the quote is. Um, and it's very in the context of writing, the writing process. Again, this author has talks about Heidegger, of course, the famous phenomenologist, the famous in a philosophical context. But here it says, yeah, um, I'm not sure if I can really want to try to translate it, but it's on Danish, so I have to translate it in first in two steps. I'm not gonna try to do that. Maybe I can simplify it. Or maybe I'm just gonna quote it because it says itself. Yeah, I'm gonna quote. That's quoted in page 15. To lose yourself of sight and still use yourself, or what it was in the self that was outside the eye, the eye, my control. It's very, huh, I'm gonna try that again. To lose itself, like to lose yourself, and still use yourself, it is, or I have to read it first. Okay. To lose yourself off sight and still use yourself. or what was outside the eye's control, the eye, like I, not I, but I, or me, and to see something alien show up on the side before yourself, thoughts you have never thought, pictures that you've never seen. And that's a very good way of putting it and describing the process. It's like being surprised by what can show up, learning about your learning or what you integrated. And that creates, like, you have to, if you know where you're going, or the I think it's is thinking that it knows what it's gonna do, you're already there in a way. You're already there, and why bother? Why should you do? Like, if you already know where you're going, it like, why would you write anything? Like, it's not writing, it's not giving life to anything, and it's not discovering itself, and you can't realize what's relevant before you're doing the thing, the right thing. It's just a piece, lifeless part in a propositional way. And it won't have that light or that texture of, or the taste or the structure or the rhythm or of that kind of pulse, that pulse, that pulse, that like that heartbeat that wants to have a life of its own. And to quote Vervaeke's term of relevance realization, the relevance, what's pulse, the pulse is pulling you towards in anticipation towards something. And in the context of writing and other things, it's pulling you towards that word or that sentence, and that pulse of that rhythm, that tone that you can participate with if you just listen. So And it creates a certain a sense of delight in my experience when it's kind of self-organizing and uh, it's also at the same time disclosing the mind's ability to, or the mind's ability to do what it can do. Like it's also revealing that kind of qualitative expression of the mind itself. Maybe this is to stretch it, but I think it's appropriate, at least right now, in that flow that I'm, or that rhythm that I'm in. Um, what I was going to quote Verweke's term, like relevance realization, is that the relevance, when you realize something that's relevant in a process or a situation that you're participating in, the relevance realization is just interested in itself. And what does that mean in my understanding of that term? It's about that we have the capacity, or our brain or our mind, according to cognitive science, our mind tries to correct itself all the time. Like it's it's if we're in a situation, how to put this into an example. It okay, if you're gonna cook something that you cooked before, and you suddenly do something you have never done, like you're starting to improvise something while cooking. It creates a tension in your cooking process because, yeah, the mind is kind of resisting initially because it's kind of, no, it it's like, no, this is not right, and it's kind of trying to correct itself and realize itself. So that's kind of is it it tends to come in, it can come into a pattern or an old pattern. Now I can't use um, kind of garlic in this dish because that's not how the mind is, like that's not how you usually do it, so you can do it. And so initially our minds try to self-correct itself But if we're not realizing that that's going on, that might be, or first of all, it's useful to know that that's how the mind operates. It's constantly trying to get our attention and back to the dish we're always created. And of course, we do things that where that's useful, that we don't have to think about how we're walking, for instance. That just something that kind of happens without we're like we don't stop and like, yeah, I have to put one leg in front of the other, and that would be that would be really, really not very useful to contemplate every step if you're not like doing a more like a walking meditation. But we just do it. That's the point. We just do it. And but when we're doing writing or improvising or playing with words and trying out concepts and structuring it and to make this dish we never made before or used before. We don't know how it's gonna taste. We can't predict. We can just realize when we're doing it and having that flavor or that mood of like, okay, and being like step back and just witnessing how the magic happens. You can't, another metaphor that comes to mind, you can't force a seed to kind of grow and develop. Another thing that comes to mind saying that is a great book. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna pause it. It's a quote from James Hillman's the Code of the Soul. So that seed I was talking about that lives inside of us, like that acorn seed that James Hillman is had a theory about or a way of talking about it in the Code of the Soul. Is he says that the acorn theory I'm proposing is that you and I and every human is born with a defining image. And this proposition is gonna um, argue for that individuality is caused by a formal cause, the kind of the foundational core or cause, and to put it in an old philosophical term that goes back to how do you pronounce that? Aristotle? Aristotle. We're embodying, all of us, our own idea, to use Plato and Plotinus. And this forms, or this form, this idea, this image doesn't tolerate big, like, avoidances. According to theory, this inner image has a angel-like or daimonic, not demonic, but daimonic intention. That it's like a spark of consciousness, and our own interest lies upon the heart because it chose us for its own reasons. I'm gonna underline this because I think this is very aligned with what John Vervaeke's term relevance realization is very aligned with that in my understanding. So I'm emphasizing it, I'm yellowing it out. Use that in my writing. Okay, I think I've been doing. I hope I've been doing justice to the process I'm currently in, like in that writing process. Why I want to, like, I just wanted to share this because I think it's very meaningful, and learning about what you've been learning about is a way to go about that. And writing, at least for me, is very helpful, and to see it kind of unfold and organize itself in that, if you get into that tone, or if you listen to the music, that's unfolding. Okay, this became a long recording, and if you've been listening to all of this, it's I remove my hat for you, and I appreciate your attention and the time you used to um, that you used to participate with my words. See you again.